Welcome to the NanoCap podcast. I'm your host, Will Chernlin, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey through the world of NanoCap companies. For the past decade, I've talked to thousands of business owners across various industries. It's been an enlightening experience revealing the vast tapestries of entrepreneurship and innovation that thrives beneath the surface of mainstream media coverage. Each week, I will interview different leaders of NanoCap publicly traded companies to learn about their history, what they do now, and their future. As a reminder, none of this information is financial advice, and it is all for entertainment purposes only. Let's start this week's episode. Hi, everyone. On today's episode, we have Scott Wallace, the co-founder and CEO of ECD Automotive Design. Stock ticker ECDA. ECD Automotive engages in the production and sale of customized Land Rover vehicles in the United States. Scott, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time.
As I was doing my research, I usually start with the LinkedIn, but I couldn't really find a good LinkedIn for you. So it took a little bit more kind of digging to find out a little bit about your background. But do you mind telling us a little bit more about how you grew up down the street from the Land Rover factory and how that kind of influenced your life into now becoming the CEO and co-founder?
Yeah, I've always been a kind of gearhead all my life and, wanted and aspired to own cars and enjoy cars and never really had a vision to be in them as an industry, so to speak. It was more of a hobby. My background was mainly luxury hospitality and private sectors in the private equity sector and the public sector of the UK and Europe. So I did kind of 20 years in that space and actually came to the US to slow down. It was kind of 2 decades of it and came here to slow down. And then I met the Humble Brothers at a barbecue one night, and we had this idea of a beer that we could take British classics and restore them to a custom US audience. And I think the more beer we drank, the more we convinced ourselves it was a great idea. And that's really how it came about. So but the three of us were always kind of gearheads. And the conversation started about, cars we aspired to own and had owned and crashed and learned to drive in. And then it turned into the business conversation. But yeah, it was, I'd love to say it was a strategic play, but it wasn't. It was just three guys over a beer that kind of turned it into this.
And then you mentioned kind of going from Europe to then kind of try to mini retire over in America. Usually it seems to be the vice versa. So what made you think that America would be the place where you'd want to settle down opposed to start a business up again or something like that? What made you think that was actually a possibility to settle down?
Good question. I've always had a love of America. I can remember from a very young age flicking through travel catalogs and looking at pictures of all the landmarks and wanting to be part of America. And I was fortunate enough to work on the Disney College program in 1993, which seems a lifetime ago now, but I was fortunate enough to work in the Disney College program in Florida, and it made me fall more in love with the US. So, that was the logic and reason for coming back to the US when we decided to kind of semi-retire, which obviously never happened.
Yeah, and so I would love before we get too much further, I would love for you just to describe what ECD Automotive Design does in your own words before we get too far into the weeds and I forget to ask you.
Yeah. I mean, in a simple summary, ECD Automotive Design disrupts the luxury automotive space. That's really what we did. That's what we set out to do, which was to take an industry where we didn't think it was very client-centric and put the client at the center of the experience and let the designing of the vehicle be as enjoyable as the driving of the vehicle. So we think that the luxury automotive space didn't give enough choice to clients for customization. And then we realized that the rest of mod space was kind of small mom and pop operators, and that if you applied some of the disciplines of the bigger luxury automotive manufacturers, you could get the best of both worlds. So that's really what we set out to do, disrupt the automotive space in the luxury sector.
So how much of your hospitality background then kind of bled into that, as you described, that you're going to spend $250,000 on a car and then they make it seem like you're a nuisance buying it? How much of that was kind of your brainchild of you saying, hey, we should really give the customers a white glove treatment and really make it enjoyable to buy a car?
Yeah, it's exactly that. We didn't realize it at the time, but that's exactly what happened. You migrated service touches from, luxury health clubs, luxury country clubs, luxury hotels, luxury restaurants. And we kind of said, buying a car isn't that great an experience, even in the luxury sector, and certainly maintaining it and owning it isn't. So we just said, what if you took a Ritz-Carlton experience into luxury automotive and applied it? And that's what we did. We set out what we call touch points and steps through the client journey. And then, from the very early days, we appointed concierge managers into the client services team so that, the client is somebody we're holding their hand and walking them through decisions and choices. It was quite revolutionary, really, for the automotive space. I think people just kind of put a configurator online, you design some choices and color choices, and we just took it to the extreme and made it very personal.
On average, say someone does live in Florida near your facility, do they come and visit their car 3 times throughout the build, or kind of walk us through that experience?
It's very different for each client. Some clients will come in and they'll come to the factory and they'll have watched every single YouTube video, every piece of social content. They'll have printed out a Bible on exactly what they're going to design, and they control the process and will walk through it very quickly. Other clients will do it remotely via Zoom. Other clients will meet us in one of our outreach events where we take the mobile design studio to different locations. So every client is different in how they want to be handled. We've even got families that will do it. They meet once a month as a family, and they'll make 1 or 2 choices in the car at a dinner and then feed it back to us. So they can take over a year to go through the process. Some people want to just I do think it's a bit of a escapism for our clients. Our clients are high net worth individuals that have busy lives. A lot of them are, run their own businesses. And I think this is escapism, where they can just, for a few hours a month, just sit and make choices and escape from the daily, the grind of their businesses. But every client is different. Some will want to come to the factory and walk the entire line and meet every guy that's going to touch and, add value to their car. And they'll meet the guy that's going to drop the drivetrain in. They'll meet the people that are going to put the upholstery together. And other clients will just do it over Zoom over, a year perhaps.
So you mentioned something earlier, and I kind of want to pull on that thread a little bit more, where you're talking about how a lot of your competitors may be like mom and pop shops, and it tends to be in these more kind of hands-on industries like plumbing industries, HVAC, auto body shops, for example, where they tend to not scale. And it tends to be a type of business where they're kind of just happy with the local customers they got, and they run the business how they want to. What changes did you have to make it so that your business could actually scale and that you grow beyond the mom and pop shops to actually being like a publicly traded company?
To start with, you had to be a really bad mechanic, because I think that's the issue with the mom and pops. And I've got a lot of respect for them, but they're not business builders. They're typically mechanics that aspire to their shop and have done a great job of it. But that was never our entry point. None of the original founders were good mechanics. What we were good at was business builders. So we basically set a culture from day one where we empowered and reignited an American workforce that wanted to build cool cars rather than fix bad cars. And we made a deal with them that we wouldn't build the cars and they wouldn't run the business. And, for a decade, that's how we ran it. We just empowered technicians to go out and make decisions on cool cars. And we purposely stripped layers of middle management. Well, we never put them in the first place, but we typically manufacture. There are layers of middle management that kind of micromanage. Well, you can't do that in a production line that allows the customization levels we do. You need the mechanics to make real-time decisions. So I think that's the differentiator, in that we were never mechanics. So when we entered the business, there was no value I could add to building the car. I could only add value to building the business.
So with most all mechanics, I would say working at a place like ECD Automotive Design is basically the top tier of their dream jobs. Like maybe like an F1 mechanic, but like literally it's as cool a job as you can get in the automotive space. Do you have trouble ever? I was thinking about this, like having employees like take their job seriously, since it is such a fun workforce that they're so excited that you need to remind them that it's like a job at the end of the day. Because I can just imagine it just like a fantasy factory for some of these people who've been in the automotive industry for decades, and this is the coolest job on earth.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the industry, just like it did on client services, I think the industry overlooks mechanics and how much value they can add. But we've always operated that we should have a retention strategy for mechanics, not a recruitment strategy. So the way you do that, as I said earlier, is you empower them to make decisions on the line. So they do enjoy it. But I mean, each vehicle we build is challenging because each vehicle's one of one. So no 2 vehicles are the same. So as the car is moving through the production line, you could be installing an LT4 powertrain in a Defender today. You could be applying an EV powertrain in a Jaguar E-Type tomorrow. So, they're figuring things out on the fly. I don't think there's any risk of them not taking it seriously, because I think they get grounded every day by the challenges that our clients set them in terms of customization.
That makes sense. So let's move on to the procurement of the cars. How much of it is a percentage of you have some high net worth individual who says, I want this specific 1968 Land Rover? How much of it is where you present to them saying, hey, here's 6 cars we have available now. Which of these do you want? And then how do you want us to customize them? How does that process work?
Yeah, under the white glove model that we built, we do all of that. So we find the base vehicle. The client very rarely, it's only if the client wishes to provide the base vehicle we do that. But it's probably only 1 in 12 builds that over a year. So we typically do all the sourcing of the base vehicle for the client, and that depends which type of vehicle they're building. Obviously, if it's a Defender, we secure them through a procurement and supply chain. We have a logistics centre in the UK with a team that handle that there. Oddly, if it's a Jaguar E-Type, though, we typically source them in the US because there was more vehicles over here, and there were kind of some of the states that we go to, the weather has been more favourable in protecting them. So we basically handle all of that under the white glove client service approach that we take for our clients, because actually sourcing the base vehicle is a bit of a headache that people don't really want to deal with. So we just kind of take all that away from them.
So I would consider myself kind of a car idiot. I own a Tesla, to show you how much I care about like the ins and outs of my car. I just want to get from A to Z. But what, with you growing up near the factory, what is it about like Land Rovers that these people can buy any car in the world and they want to get a refabricated, rehashed Land Rover? What is it about the Land Rover brand that people love? And how did it go from like a actual work vehicle to now a more of a luxury status? When was that pivot?
I kind of think that we just saw the Land Rovers a bit like you guys do with the F-150. In Europe, it's a farm vehicle, it's a utility vehicle, it's a government vehicle. I think that's where the idea of the beer came from. Can you take something that's kind of just a big part of life, everyday life in the UK, and turn it into a customized one-of-one product? And I think the classic boxy shape of the Land Rover is always going to be desirable. I think people just love the original shape. I mean, the new Land Rover Defender has been launched in 2020. Nice car, but it's lost the boxiness of what the original did. So I think it was just a unique kind of blend of a vision of taking something that had all the nostalgia and romanticism of a classic car, but modernising it with creature comforts and daily driving ability.
Makes sense. And so is it based on the customer, or where do you find the balance of kind of trying to keep original parts to, I saw some of the cars you make where they have actually just like a super nice big digital screen in the dashboard. Where do you decide kind of when to keep with the classic and then also when to just modernize and make it easy for the driver?
Yeah, we don't. That's the beauty of the business model. We don't have an R&D team here because we have 600 R&D clients that make that decision for us. The whole model of the car being a one-of-one vehicle means that every single element of the vehicle is decided by the client. So if the client wants to make it where it's basically an equivalent to a G-Wagon, so it looks boxy, it's got the classic look, but it's got all the modern touches of a G-Wagon, then that's what some clients will do. Other clients may have a romantic nostalgia from seeing it in Safari at one point in their life, and they want to keep it as classic as they possibly can. So really, that's the beauty of our business model. There is no pattern that we identify as a path forward. The clients choose the path of each vehicle, and then we just fulfill their needs. It's a very subjective business, and it's meant to be, which is every client's car is one of one, and they genuinely are. Once people create that car, the IP belongs to the client, and it can't be repeated. Some people will take cues from it and signals and try and make it look like it, but we never let anybody repeat an exact model of any car that's been built.
And then as you expand the business, how do you see expansion? Do you see just finding more customers? Do you see trying to sell more $120,000 cars instead of $240,000 cars? Or do you think just expanding the models you work with and working with old Ford cars or Chevys or Hondas or whatever?
Yeah, well, let's start with the business model. I mean, the factory that we created in COVID, when we saw demand spike during COVID, we knew that we were going to have a greater demand over the years. And we were in a factory that was kind of not really sufficient for scaling. So we built a new factory, and it's got 3 production lines. And at capacity, that can build 180 units in a single shift, 5-day working week, 8-hour shift pattern. So the factory can build 180 units a year. So basically, how we're going to do that is a number of ways. We've done since we went public, we did a kind of a roll-up royalty strategy where we went back to those mom and pops that we admire and said, we've got the classic car gigafactory where we can build, but you guys haven't got that solution. But they were still taking orders for classic cars. So we went into the Mustang space, we went into the Toyota FJ space, we went into another Defender builder space, and we said to those guys, look, let us take the problem away from you so that when, you can't give your people that are ringing up and asking to do a 250,000 restoration, they can't give them visibility, end dates, supply chain challenges, labor challenges. And we said, we'll deal with all of that from you. So the first thing we did to fill the factories did that. We added more models to the toy box, as we call it, by adding the Mustang and the FJ. So we've got more products in there, but I think we've got enough products now to fill the factory with the Land Rover Defender, the Range Rover Classic, the Jaguar E-Type, the Mustang and the FJ. So there's 5 very good products there. Obviously, the Mustang's got a broad American base that is much more familiar with the product than they are a Land Rover. So there's a bigger kind of search volume there of people that are looking for the Mustang. So I think we've got enough products. That was the first thing we did, is we added more toys to the toy box. Second thing we did is then we did some outreach. For the first time ever this year, we put an outreach team together. We took a mobile design studio trailer, very high end, very immersive, can seal, feel and touch. So, we've done 650 of these vehicles and nobody's ever seen the product before. So for the first time ever this year, we took it on the road and did some traditional kind of outreach events where people could see, feel, design and touch and test drive the product. So we've been doing that this year. So we've done over 70,000 miles. 15 different events in different states, so people got to see and feel and touch the car. So that was the second thing we did to kind of fill the factory and scale it. And then the third thing that we've just announced is, while we don't really want to typically act like a luxury automotive in the traditional sense, we are going to kind of take the best bits of luxury retail, luxury hospitality, and luxury automotive and create a retail experience. So we're very close to kind of opening location number 1 for that. And then we're looking at 3 to 4 locations throughout the US where we can put this in the right location with the right demographic, where people can get easier access to come and see and feel the product. But it certainly won't be a traditional luxury automotive dealership model, where it's a big footprint in the suburbs where you can, there's a paint shop on site and everything else. It won't be that at all. It's going to be more of a luxury retail experience. So people experience that kind of Ritz-Carlton experience when they walk into one of the retail stores. So that's exactly how those are the things that we're going to do to fill the factories, by making the product more visible by new sales channels and by the new toys that we've added to the toy box.
No, I think about those retail locations. What, just, you don't have to say the actual locations, but what are just like the hot spots for your customers in general? Is it just like people from Miami, Dallas, and LA? That's my first assuption. But where do people come from?
You kind of hit the spot there. We've used penetration all the way up to the East Coast, New York, Boston, that kind of area. We've got a huge footprint in Los Angeles area, California, a huge footprint in Dallas as well. South Florida is a big footprint for us. Nashville's a big footprint. Colorado is a big footprint. We've kind of done an overlay of where our database tells us our clients are, where our existing clients are, people that have actually built the cars with us. And then we've looked at other luxury brands and seen where they are. And it's identified 20 cities in the US where we could open a retail location. But we don't need 20 stores. Let's be clear on that. This isn't an ego trip to get the brand out there in every mall and every city. That's not exactly. We think we only need, we've only got a delta of about 60 units a year in the factory to take it to capacity. So we only need probably 3 to 4 retail stores selling 1 to 2 units a month each. That's exactly why we're going down that route. And, we're hoping to be in those locations in 2025.
No, with the retail locations, that's the beauty of you selling luxury cars instead of trying to sell like 1s and 2s of candy or something like that. You can pay for that space pretty quickly.
Exactly. You've just got to be smart about the business model. And we've talked a lot about that, because when I say a Ritz-Carlton experience or a luxury retail experience, I think people's assumptions are there's going to be $1 million chandelier hanging from the roof. There's absolutely not going to be. If there's one thing I learned in luxury hospitality, nobody remembers the high-end fit-out costs. They remember the receptionist, they remember the housekeeper, they remember the bartender, they remember those human interaction points. So in our retail stores, we're putting together a standard operating procedure where, the ambassadors of the brands that work there are going to take people through this immersive experience. But the car is the hero. You don't need the chandelier, because the car's going to sit there as the hero. People are going to see, feel, and touch the car, and then go through a high-end experience with our brand ambassadors that are on site. So, you just got to be sensible about these things and don't distract from the hero of the car, which is the car. So that's what we aim to do, is put the car at the center of the experience.
Yeah, to certify your example, my wife and I just like a week and a half ago were staying at the Ritz-Carlton in Singapore, and it had an entire art gallery in it, and we never went and looked at it.
No.
So
you won't. If you ask people that go on the luxury cruise liners and you said to them, "Tell me something about the ship," they'll tell you something about staff before they tell you something about the ship. And we learned that the hard way in luxury hospitality, where you'd get the interior designers and they want to spend literally $1 million on a chandelier. And you say, well, what does it matter if somebody doesn't put a chocolate on the pillow at night? It's the small things, it's the small touches.
So as we kind of move forward in the business, you mentioned earlier about you get a big spike in sales around COVID time, and that appears around the time you all went public. What spurred the decision to go public opposed to raising funds privately? And what did you know about being a publicly traded CEO, and what did you have to learn?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been on both sides of the fence in Europe. I've been in the public world in Europe, and I've been in the private equity side. And we ummed and ahed. I mean, we certainly knew that to scale, we would need to go one of those paths. The thing we were worried about with the private equity path is we didn't want to lose control of the business model. We didn't want it to become a P&L exercise where people would say, well, you've got to cut this and get the margin up. We're very aware that margins are important, but we didn't want to compromise on the business model and making it a one-on-one immersive client experience. Basically, we also thought it was time for the industry. This is a $15 billion US industry annually in all the different income streams, from financial services to supply chain manufacturing, where we sit, lifestyle, as I call it, and supply and sales channels. So it's a huge industry, and it's so fragmented. And we identified that somebody had to kind of be the first over the wall, if you like, and kind of put the head above the parapet and say, look, let's start taking a very fragmented industry and consolidating it. And I don't think that's going to happen overnight, but I think, obviously there's companies out there like Singer, who do the redesign of the Porsche 911, and, they're private equity backed, and we've gone public backed. But there's lots of small players out there, and there's some medium sized, and there's some bigger ones appearing. And I think the quicker that we all identify that we should get in the sandbox and play nicely together, I think it'll be taken seriously as a sector in its own right. And I do see a day where perhaps one of the luxury automotive brands or a luxury brand in itself would consolidate some of the bigger players into one group, because I saw last week that LVMH were taking ownership of a small luxury yacht company, I think, in Italy. This is a luxury business. It's a luxury product, so it can fit across multiple industries. But it just came to that point where we just thought it was time to kind of, get over the wall and just start talking about how classic restoration is a bigger market than people realize.
Yeah, and I can just imagine like the synergies with someone like LVMH, where you have someone who buys your car and then their buddy drives in it and they go, well, I want one too. And then all of a sudden their buddy wants one. And then you one sale can turn into 12 sales all of a sudden over the course of a couple of years, just because you're in the right circles of people who would be buying that car. If one person would buy it, most likely all their friends would get that kind of car too.
Yeah, it's the same demographic we're dealing with. We're fortunate that we have we have two kind of fan bases. We've got a client fan base, then we've got a fan base that is a social media following. And we've always said from day one that not everybody can afford a product. We didn't want to make people feel that they couldn't be part of the brand because of that. I'm sure most of us can share a story where they walked into a Porsche dealership or a Ferrari dealership when they were younger and got swished away like a mosquito because, they didn't want you in there. Well, we never wanted that. The people that tour our factory, our fan base are open to come at any time and see the factory, as well as our clients are. We're only 10 miles from Walt Disney World, so there's often days where you can get multiple visitors from all over the world just come and see the factory, and we're fans of it. So we're in the same kind of demographics as other luxury brands, but I think we've been very conscious to make sure that we don't act like a pompous luxury brand.
Okay, some quick questions here at the end as we wrap up. One I just had as kind of just looking through your website and such and seeing kind of the live video cam. Have you all ever thought about just like creating a reality TV show?
Yeah, we've been asked to do it many times, and we've declined because we don't want them to have editorial control of it. So we wanted it to be real. We don't want kind of those staged events where they say,
Yeah. Billy steals Tommy's wrench and he's mad at him for that.
Yeah, where it turns into something humorous. There's enough characters in the business and process to make it entertaining. So I guess if ever we were approached to do it as a real reality TV, then we'd consider it. But we've turned down multiple where we didn't have editorial control because we didn't want to kind of change the philosophy and look and feel of the brand.
And then my last question is, or second to last question is, what's your dream car?
Well, I've been fortunate that I've had my dream car. I wanted a 996 911 GT3 manual 2004, and I got that. But I often think about what I would design here, and I would definitely do a low drag E-Type GT coupe, and I'd probably keep it in that kind of titanium grey. It's a wider body E-Type. It's a completely different shape, and I'd probably put like the RAF fighter jet switches in it and toggles to make it more nostalgic. But and I'd keep it the original kind of 3.8, I think it was 340 brake horsepower engine, and I'd go manual. But so yeah, I've kind of ticked off my dream car. I've always said I want to do exactly this. Oddly, I would like to build one from scratch, and if I did, it'd be a low drag E-Type from 1964 probably.
Very cool. So if listeners want to hear more about ECD Automotive Designs, they're looking to get a car from you, or just want to follow along with what you all are doing, where should I send my listeners?
Yeah, the best place is our website, which is ECDAutodesign.com. And you can see everything there, every car we've built, behind the scenes. You can see content we've placed. Most people get a lot of education from our YouTube channel. So ECD Automotive Design on YouTube is a big channel for us. We have a heavy content strategy on there. We kind of show everything. The live streams on there, as you identified, you can see the cameras live from there. And every week there's probably 5 or 6 pieces of content that get added. So, all the social channels, obviously. But our website and our YouTube channel are the big ones where you can see real-time content.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Scott. And for those still listening, please remember to subscribe and review. Thanks.
Thank you.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, or any other advice. The information is not investment advice or any offer to buy or sell any securities or to make any investment. The views expressed by the guests are their own, and any reference to third-party products, services, or information does not constitute an endorsement therefor by NanoCap Podcast or its affiliates. The NanoCap Podcast express disclaims all liability